Hello everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another Roll20 review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the marketplace section of online role-playing website Roll20.net. With this video, we'll be looking at the module Mists of Akuma, Fangs of Revenge, designed by Storm Bunny Studios. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to my platinum patrons Andrew, Brian, and Richard, and gold patrons RPG Papercrafts and Charming Grenade. Thank you so much for your support. So we flip over to the Roll20 page. So I have no knowledge or experience with the campaign setting of Mists of Akuma. It does use the open gaming license of 5th edition, so if you know how to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then you can play this one. Use the same system, the same stat blocks, all of that. It does have a shit ton of new races. The world, from what I can understand, is a bit like a steampunk Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set in the Far East. It's kind of how I would describe it. I think I'm probably butchering it really badly. There is like a little primer included here near the bottom, and it even mentions near the top. There it is, Soberon, a quick primer. And it basically just lists a few. The only new mechanic is that you have a new stat of Dignity and Hataku, which is essentially like a good and evil rating. And there are a shit ton of races, as you can see here. A total of 27 race and sub-race options. They just kind of went nuts, which is kind of where I got that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, because a lot of it is anthropomorphic beings. So there's bird people, there's frog people, there's ape people, there's mutants, there's undeads, there's everything in between, which is fascinating. Unfortunately, each of these has, a cool, very, Far East sounding name. Which is very thematic and nice, but when you see a bunch of these like together, in addition to like the proper names that are used here, I'll be honest, it is like overwhelming. There are an overwhelming amount of NPCs included here for how relatively short this adventure is. So let's go break down in the beginning what you get in this module. So for Mists of Akuma, Fangs of Revenge, which is $9.99 on the Roll20 marketplace, you get a journal broken up into 4 acts, including a prologue and epilogue. You get 4 5-foot battle maps. One, I said isometric building map. It's not technically isometric. It's like a side cutout view, but it's essentially not one that you would actually battle on. 2 non-gridded city or world maps. There's 1 city and kind of 1 world map. 1 page of NPC tokens that are all statted out correctly, so you can copy them and paste them where you need. 21 unique named NPC tokens. That's usually awesome to have that many, but for how, again, relatively small this adventure is, that's actually way too many to keep track of. 12 generic NPC tokens. 18 optional PC tokens, and I can scroll down and show where those are down here. And you can see here, obviously the token style is not one that I'm used to. I am used to the ones that Roll20 has adapted for their official stuff, which is the actual like literal circular tokens that then have like the pictures on them. This is like literally just artwork that you can drag onto the map. I don't mind that the top-down style is the one I really don't like the look of, where it tries to mimic like looking down at like a miniatures or diorama or something. This one's kind of in the middle to me. Like, obviously, I really like that token system the best because I think that creates a nice uniform style and is instantly recognizable about, okay, what is a creature on the map. This one is kind of middle of the road where it's like, okay, I like having the artwork, but honestly, what I would do with all these is just turn them into tokens. Like, and there are free programs out there. You can go to Token Stamp, or there's a token tool where you literally can just drag pictures and make a token from there. So it's a bummer this is done this way. Obviously, that's a stylistic choice. The art style is inconsistent. Some of it is good, some of it's not so good, but I guess it's nice to have these options here for PCs. Unfortunately, the actual character sheets and rules for making these aren't in here. It does mention, I believe in the README, there's a free preview PDF of the core rule book, which is Soberon, a quick, oh no, sorry, it's the Mists of Akuma core rule book, as well as several other free supplements. So there are links where you can find out more information about this universe. Obviously, you can just put this in your own campaign if it has some kind of Far East flavor. If you just want to put that there, but it so heavily uses this concept that seems to be intrinsic in this world, which is having a lot of like shapeshifters and the evil snake people, which I guess you could use like UNT for D&D, but it feels like this one is actually pretty particularly hard to just pull out and drop into like Forgotten Realms, for example. In addition to the fact that it is this like very much this Far East themed city. So hopefully those free rules are there for making these character races, because none of that information is actually in this module. These are just tokens. None of these have actual character sheets tied to them whatsoever. And you get 11 player handouts at the bottom here, which is mostly to do with the new attribute system of the Dignity and Haitoku. I'm going to butcher a lot of Far East names this whole time. There are 2 actual notes here, and there's a favor point system which comes into play in Act 2. So I'm going to go over the adventure real quickly. From what I can surmise, I do like this art here. It's very cool looking. But yeah, there's a lot of tokens. And I have some, just to summarize it, I have some major problems with this module. I think there's a certain amount of things that need to be included in a Roll20 module. If I'm going to purchase a module on Roll20, then I expect like character tokens to be tied to sheets, for example. I expect maps. I expect good maps. If you're going to make specifically a Roll20 module, I expect you to have good maps. And by good maps, I mean your maps look good, and they have dynamic lighting in place, and they have tokens on the board, and like everything is ready to go. That's what I expect. If you go beyond that and do other things, then that's cool, like putting the NPC token page. That's always nice to have. But if you don't do that step, then I'm taking a lot of points off or whatever. And unfortunately, this one has a lot of those kind of problems that I was frankly shocked to see in any module that's actually like for sale on Roll20. The fact that it doesn't have these elements there is really, really bad. But plot-wise, it's a little confusing the way it works. So they get the mission to work for this lord in this city. So the region of Soberin is here. Nice little map. And I think this is the area it actually takes place in. Specifically, it's just this city of Samon is where the entire city takes place. So it is an urban adventure. I should have mentioned in the beginning, it is designed for 4 to 6 players between level 6 and 7. So it's a solidly tier 2 adventure, and that's kind of a good level range in terms of players are used to dealing with a lot of easy threats. And now they can become like agents of a lord of a city and be hired to do these kind of works because they're becoming more famous and have more options at their disposal for how to handle threats. So you get this map, and then you get the city of Salmon, which this map is actually used for Act 2. So Act 1, real quick, is just them meeting with the Lord Idaru. This character right here at the Haikasuru court. Once again, I'm just going to be butchering all this. This map looks fine. I don't expect a big fancy Mike Schley map again. And I actually kind of like that they put through tokens on here, although I don't know how like spoilery it is for players to already know kind of who they're dealing with. This is kind of like you're looking at an overworld screen and you see these locations of interest that you can go to, and even some of them have like the major NPCs there that they can already see on the screen. It's probably meant to only look at these once they're actually there and looking at these characters. Not quite sure about that, but Act 1, they get the mission that there's a group of rebels. There's working class struggles here in this city, and these rebels are basically a nuisance, and they think an attack's coming, and the players are tasked with trying to root out these rebels. And during the beginning, they need to try to their opening mission is to curry favor with these rebels by going around to these different sites. And essentially it boils down, and this is Act 2, essentially just boils down to just talking with people, skill checks and that kind of thing. It's not like, and I I encountered a lot of this with the Pathfinder War for the Crown on Roll20. Adventure Path, obviously, is a published book as well. With a lot of that kind of, okay, you're just given free reign in a city, and here's some notable things to go do. But that one had a lot more interesting things to do, because some of them were like mini dungeons, or they had like maps associated with them to where they had to fight something, or maybe it wasn't a combat scenario, but it was something interesting. And this one, none of it was particularly interesting. It was just talking to people and rolling skill checks to convince people. The most interesting stuff was like following people around. Could be kind of interesting, which can be difficult for a DM to run. Or there was like a list of like you could sabotage things, which sounded really cool. There's a whole detailed list of like sabotaging a railway, for example, and there was rules for that. Let's see if I can find that. Tracking the Fangs, subterfuge, and then sabotage. Yeah, and there's a whole rule for derailing this railway, and it was fantastic. Using a handcart to travel the line is a good way to speed up the journey. Derailing the actual train is virtually impossible. DC 20. Cause a catastrophe. Hijack a train and cause a crash. Like, all that sounds amazing, and none of that is given any kind of maps or, any kind of thing like there. Or there's sneaking into the building and forging signatures, manipulating records in this rail office. All of that sounds really cool, but it's all comes down to theater of the mind, because none of that is a map in here. And again, the point of Roll20, I feel like, is because you have this visual component. Like, you're all together. I want maps. Like, not everything needs a map, and I understand that. That's fine. But this one doesn't already have too many maps. It does have probably a good amount for the length that it is. But there's things going on here that I would have liked to see more maps for, is my point. And those two examples I gave right here were pretty much the only interesting ones. The only thing that's given a map is this bar area, like this tavern, and it's the most inconsequential location. It's this Fudo tea house, and the entire point of it, if they ask about the rebels, open talk of rebellion is most unwelcome, and they will essentially just kick the players out. But there's this entire battle map given to this situation where they're just kicked out of here if they ask about rebels, and it's a really nice map. Like, it's kind of a really good, like, tavern map for Roll20. This is the exact kind of map style I like to see. And there's just nothing, there's really no point to it. You see the dynamic lighting right there. I don't understand. Like, it seems criminally underused, in other words. They just show up, they ask about rebels, they get kicked out. You can show them this map so it can turn into a big fight, but... And you can see also, the tokens don't work for me, this style. I mean, it's not, like I said, not as bad as the top-down. I don't like the top-down at all. This one, just make them tokens. Like, that would be so much better. You can't even tell what this one is right here, until you actually click on it. I'll have to... There we go. This is what this character looks like. But from here, like, this just looks like a blob. Like, you see, like, the token should have just cut out, like, the bust and the head, instead of having this weird, tall... This looks like just a blob of white robe. It does not show up very well at all. And thankfully, most of the tokens are more like this, where you can tell, okay, it's just like a face of somebody. But something like that just does not look good. And it's just weird that this is the only one given a map, and it's one of the least interesting things going on. So Act 2, the whole point is to go around and you do these tasks, and all these tasks gain you a favor point, which kind of reminds me of like the Tyranny of Dragons system. And then once you have 3 favor points, then the rebels contact you, and then you can actually gain more favor points in order to actually like join them. If you wanted to, you could just switch sides. And it all comes down to Act 3, which is this giant war zone where essentially all of our factions come together. And meanwhile, in the background, there's like all these shapeshifters trying to hunt down these snake people that you'll eventually learn about through Act 2. There's a lot going on. There's like all of those little areas in Act 2 have like multiple named NPCs to keep track of, and a lot of them fucking show up in Act 3. And then you go to this map, and it's completely empty? I didn't understand this at all. There's a lot going on this map. This map is a war zone full of multiple tokens and factions, and there's nothing on this map? How does that happen? Like, again, if you're going to put a map together and you have things happening on that map, then you need to have the actual tokens on that map. Also, no dynamic lighting on this map whatsoever. I don't understand that at all. And I believe this is all glued onto the map. Yep. So players are going to see this also on them. It's not. This is not good. This is not good. You don't want to see. You definitely don't want the title on there where the players can see for sure. Let's see. Is that? Yep. That's all just one big thing. It doesn't work. So, and the problem is, I'm not even sure. Like, I read over this Act 3 section several times, and I'm still not sure who all is supposed to be here. Like, there's not really a breakdown of like, okay, here's this faction and this is what they've got. Here's this faction. This is where they've got. It's just literally written in a style like almost like a book where it's like, okay, and then these people are here, and then these people show up, and then but also these people are here, and it's like, wait, what? Like, I need to keep track of all this. This is horrifying. The pretense of the PCs has spurred the Hebi to act, kidnapping 3 different rebels to drag away. Lieutenant Toriyama is there with guards. And Shishani is there. The Hebi Torora is there. The Fuzi, Jidar, Yi, and Ota Kaisaru are all there. Like, holy shit, I'm just trying to read this, and it's not going well. There is an interesting thing where the players can kind of choose, to either join up with the, stick with the Empire or join with the rebels. And that kind of classic trope where you're investigating that, but you can actually join them, or you can just kind of remain neutral. And that does change a little bit of how Act 4 works, because Act 4 ultimately is about this group trying to kill this other group, and the whole rebel system is just kind of a backdrop for that. And so the players have to, and Act 4 literally begins with like just the whole uprising happens. So the city is just in chaos. You're running through the streets. It's all a madhouse, and it kind of either like the rebels are attacking your players, or the Empire is like taking shots at your players. So like either way, it kind of ends up being the same thing mechanically, where you're running through the city streets and it's dangerous, no matter which kind of side you ended up siding with. And then you go into this, what is it? The factory, the Suzuki Rail basement, and then you actually can stop this kind of just ritual murder of these characters. And there's a lot going on in this basement. You can see here. Water vats, forges, tool storage, rail storage. There's a dumbwaiter you can travel on. There's a lot of cool shit. So I'm reading all this going, okay, there's a lot of neat stuff going on in this. There actually is a map for the town street, I forget. Also no dynamic lighting here on this town street, which is very odd. But again, and you could throw a lot of tokens on here as the players literally just move along, and there's either like snipers taking shots at them, or they're just taking damage every turn. You almost don't even need a map for this. You could just do all that in just go through several rounds and do skill checks. But there's no tokens on here, which, okay. This one you definitely need a map for, which is here. This map is hideous. It's hideous. Like, it sounds neat on paper. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. There's neat things that players can operate and use and coordinate with and tactically, use stairs and walls and all that, which I think dynamic lighting is on this map, yeah. But it is fucking ugly. It is really, really nasty. Just this gray. I mean, I don't want to shit on it too much, but I just feel like if you give me enough time, I could sit here and make a better map with this concept. It's just too big and too empty. Like, I get that it's supposed to be this basement, but like, just game-wise, it doesn't. This does not look good. Like, I don't want to stare at this map very long. The red walls, the gray floor. This huge empty area, these oddly angles for all these rooms, and this part also got me. The GM layer has which is good. This is not on the map layer, it's the GM layer. But you can see here, they're all connected on the same thing. So I can't just take one of these and move it if I wanted to. Like, my players are on here, and I was like, all right, that's in the way. I need to move it. No, you have to move this whole goddamn thing around. Why is that all on one layer? That's really dumb. Don't do that. Give me a separate section of each of these things, please. And why are there no tokens on this map? Why? I don't understand that at all. There's no tokens on this map, or the Warzone map, or the town map. If you're going to sell a module on Roll20, tokens need to be on your maps. That should be a minimum. Like, a minimum thing on everything that's sold on Roll20 is the token. I mean, that's the whole point of getting it on Roll20, so it's all set up like this, and all the tokens are in place. And again, because if and do the thing where in Roll20 has done this with their Wizards of the Coast stuff. If it's written in a way that's like, okay, well, it might not be like this, and that's true. Like, if the players end up doing something where they're there before the enemy is, and that could change the whole dynamic, that's fine. you can either just copy this map and make that a separate one, or just say, okay, put it in the notes and say, like, look, if this is the case, then, you know, have all these things on the map on the GM layer and be like, pop things in as you need them, or have them off to the side on the GM layer and say, drag them on there if you need them. I don't understand why there's just no tokens on this map whatsoever. And then the other bummer is that the if you drag somebody over, okay, that one does work. Maybe the named ones. Let's see, let's test this out for a second. No, that one doesn't. Was that just a random one that works then? Now I have to check all of these, damn it. Okay, maybe that one just randomly. So you can see a lot of these, the tokens aren't set up correctly. I just did the drag and drop, which is something you can do with Roll20, and the tokens don't have them set up as the default token. So right now it is just dragging this picture over and creating that as a token, but it's not actually tied to the character sheet. This one, for some reason, oh, that's weird. It still says it's not tied to a token sheet, but the name is correct on that one. My point is, it's jacked up here, and that should not be the case. Most of these, see, they're not tied in at all. None of the stats are there, so you can't do the drag and drop, in other words. And that's, I think, a pretty easy fix. And it mentions, you know, okay, well, in order to use these things, you go here, and it's all set up correctly here, and that is true. You can go here, Control C and Control V, and it'll pop it up as you need it. But the fact that it's not on here, I mean, that's an extremely easy fix, I believe. I think you go to Edit. Let's see if I can do this in my review right now. Delete the default token, use that as a default token, save it, and then drag it, and there it's fixed. You see what I just did? That took 2 fucking seconds. And then that one is the old one, so we delete that one, and then we drag, whoops, if I can actually click properly, and see it's fit, like I just fixed it. Like, that doesn't take, it seems like a really, really bad thing to have that not be a thing. And all you have to do is update the default token to where you put in all your numbers correctly, and then you have it ready to go. So I was horrified to see that you couldn't just drag and drop these tokens. That just, again, that's kind of like the map thing, where it just seems like a basic thing that you should have with all this Roll20 stuff. Some of these don't even have tokens. They're not even dragging, as you can see here. That one does. Of course, none of it's set up correctly. So, from a mechanical standpoint, the module seems kind of broken in that way, in that I don't like the way the maps are presented. I don't like the fact that the tokens aren't on the maps. I don't believe dynamic lighting is on like 2 of these maps. And I don't like the way that the NPC sheets don't appear to be connected to the tokens. Like, there's just a lot of problems with the mechanical aspect. And then story-wise, I think there's just a little too much going on with the named NPCs to where it almost takes away from what the PCs are doing. Like, the PCs should always be the stars of the story. And one of the, like, traps you can fall into in designing an adventure is to write it like a novel and then just insert these PCs as just kind of these bystanders, like caught in the middle of the DM's story. But really, it should be like the DM and the player's story, which is why designing adventures is so difficult. Like, admittedly, because you have to be able to do that kind of ad-libbing process and leave things open for the story to change and the players to be able to change that story along with it. Which is why I think that Act 3 resolution is good, in that the players can choose how they handle that war zone in Act 3, whether they side with the Empire or continue with the Rebels or try to just play both sides. And then that leads to slightly different things in Act 4, although Act 4 ultimately is just the same kind of fight at this basement location. So I like that there's a little bit more agency. I just feel like there's just too many characters, and Act 2 gets a little... It's just... I hate complaining that there's too much of something. That feels like a really unfortunate complaint to make, but I just feel like I wish there would have been maybe a few less locations in Act 2 and a few less NPCs, and instead fleshed out the ones that were there and made those characters maybe more interesting. So quantity quality over quantity, perhaps, here, I think would have been the better way to go about it. So let's do my quick pros and cons for Mists of Akuma, Fangs of Revenge. Let's go back to this cover page. I do like this artwork on the cover page. Looks nice. So pro, the Tezuki Rail Basement, which is that location I just exited from, that last zone, has a lot of detail and interesting things to work with. I do like the actual written part of that adventure section. It looks like a neat little... I mean, there's no dungeon here. This is like an urban, city. Almost feels like a Shadowrun style adventure in that it is like doing things around a city, and you're dealing with like, people and houses and corporate buildings. Like, it's very not... It feels quite different from D&D, and even an urban D&D, like a Dragon Heist. It feels quite different from all that, because you were dealing with like warehouses and factions and all that, so that part is nice, even though the actual map is really kind of hideous looking. The other pro I wanted to mention is that I do like these combat sheets. I haven't even mentioned these yet. It includes these nice quick reference 5e combat sheets, which are really, really good. I want to see these in like all of the OGL adventures. It reminds me very much of like a board game will have like a card or a sheet that you would give to every player that just reminds them like what they can do on their action and what their goals are and how different mechanics work. A lot of board games do this, and it's really effective because it has like a quick sheet of rules, so you're not all just passing around a rule book or something. And I think that's a really good idea. There's actually 2 of these, Combat Sheet 1 and 2, because there's a lot you can do, and it's a good reminder, even for veterans of D&D. I think it's just a good reminder of all you can do on your turn, what the bonus action, reaction, all that kind of thing. That's just nice to have. So I appreciate them including that here. Cons. Con tokens are not set up correctly in terms of links to the character sheets. You can copy and paste from the NPC token page and be fine with that. That's fine. Obviously, bare minimum, you need to have these things set up. The character sheets are set up. You can go from there. That's fine. You just cannot drag and drop from here, which is really bizarre because I've gotten way used to doing that now. And it's a really easy thing to fix. You saw how I did it. You just have to make sure that your token is set up, and then you make that the default token here, and then that should set it up to where you can drag and drop. That's a really fucking easy fix to make, so it's a real bummer that was not done. Cons, only one of the battle maps had tokens set up, and I think only 2 of them had dynamic lighting set up, which just really seems inexcusable. If you're gonna, that's a huge con for me. If you're gonna put a map together, you need tokens on there, especially this one, because it was so confusing on, again, I read it several times, and I wasn't even entirely sure who all was on this map, in terms of where they were showing up, where they were coming from, where they were located, and which all of these insanely huge amount of named NPCs were here. And that's my other con, is that I think there are literally just way too many characters for the relative size and scope of this adventure, which feels like a Shadowrun length run, where it's like, here's your mission, a twist or 2 might happen, and then here's the resolution. It's just done in 4 acts here, which is not a one-shot. It's maybe, when I say a session, our sessions last about more like 3 hours rather than 4. But I would say this one is maybe a 4-session adventure or something. So maybe less for people to play more. But in other words, it's not a one shot. But still, it's not, it's shorter than say like a Lost Mine of Fendelver or something like that. And I just think there's way too many named NPCs here that are used in different ways and used in like multiple ways, and you have to keep track of what their goals are and motivations, and it's too much, and I feel like it also ultimately takes the spotlight too much from the PCs themselves. So my final verdict for Mists of Akuma, Fangs of Revenge. The Far East setting amid a world of anthropomorphic shapeshifters is intriguing, but Mists of Akuma, Fangs of Revenge suffers from basic Roll20 map and token errors. Thank you everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.